This is my guest for today on my YouTube page. His name is Steven Lakamu Siosiua Afford. Amazing. He is a Niuean and his names are all from 3 different fathers. So Siosiua is his biological dad, Lakamu was his adopted dad, and Afford was his 3rd adopted father, that he's taken the name of Afford. So welcome, Steven.
Thank you.
I have the privilege of having you on this YouTube channel.
Nice.
And it is an honor to have you join me. And I would like to just start off by asking you some questions about your life.
Let's go for it.
So can you just go from the very beginning and what you would like to share with us from your childhood to coming over to New Zealand, and just start from there for now until we ask you a few questions. I know he's had a very interesting life. I have known him since I was 15. That's a long time ago, and we're well into maybe 53 years since we've known each other. I mean, I came across him when he was 15, and we started...
Are you sure you came across me or I came across you?
Oh, I do remember Steven saying one time he was in a class thinking one day he would like to meet someone beautiful, and wow, he got his wish. But no, we're just having a bit of fun here. And so, Steven, you can start off by just telling us a few things about your life growing up in Niue as a child, because that would have been very hard for you as a 10-year-old to just be, moved into another country with another family. So would you like to carry on and tell us about what it was like for you?
I guess that as a young kid back in Niue, everybody could probably relate to it. You get all this freedom. You'll run around sometimes like a chicken with no head or something. Just as a kid, Niuean kid. I'm proud of those moments being in Niue. It's a beginning that I have no regrets of. But there was a sad time when my parents had to send me offshore, like what Lily was saying earlier. And this was late 1969. And I was pre-adopted by my mum to her younger brother, Lakamu. And that was the transition. My other adopted mum, Hula.
Hikutawake.
Hikutawake. What's the other?
Tuapa?
Tuapa. Anyway, my life changed dramatically when that transition was coming into New Zealand. Mm-hmm. It was a time when I still remember that time coming on a plane and looking down and saying, wow, look at all those lights down. I was a little kid. I wouldn't say little, but I was a kid. I was fascinated by the modern country, New Zealand. And today I'm quite privileged to be interviewed by Mrs. Niue, 1992, 93. And I'm honored and I'm privileged, and life since has been quite exciting, fascinating. I always thank God for it. For if it was not for the Almighty God, Jesus Christ, and the Holy Ghost, things could have been turned out a bit different. But however, since arriving in New Zealand, things sort of changed quite dramatically in a good sense. There was a lot of experience.
So, Steven, we're just going on ahead a bit here, but would you like to just briefly share a little bit about Niue as a young child before you came? What was it like growing up with your father, your mom, your siblings? What was life like for you then? What was your experience as a child growing up in Niue?
Life in Niue, I guess, it's an experience you can look back now and say, wow, that was life. My dad used to take me fishing on his canoe. He carried the canoe with me in it.
Wow.
And remember, in them days, there was no such thing as life jacket. But my dad had such confidence. And Niueans can relate to this, especially in Mutalau, down in Uruvehi. Your father's going to carry you in the canoe through all those coral and the reef and time the waves. Like every fisherman knows, you've got to time the wave. And to this day, I still remember those moments. Those are experienced moments that probably transitions my life, that you can literally sort of live your life to that certain extreme. And Niue probably, or my dad anyway, has taught me that. And Niue is just an experience. It's a beautiful lifestyle. You know, like I said earlier, there's no regrets. And Niue didn't have water at the time. It was all rainwater. And I still remember when they started drawing for water. I was quite fascinated by it. You know, and whenever it would rain, all the Niueans, especially us little kids anyway, would get out in the rain and have a bath. And that was another memorable moment, you know, being Niueans. But of course, when water wasn't a scarcity, then there'd be plenty full of water. However, takatau tangata Niue, one of dahe mana flora ne manatuel, ko te matua, kupa te matua. And this is Mum. Ui tu mai matua pe, mea, because I was hungry at certain times. Mea, leo, nofu, leo, ke kaitame na muluhau. And I can certainly vouch for that today. Longer than the floor, you know, in the future. And of course, we see it in our own people. Obesity is probably one of the bad things that our people sort of not adopt, but hasn't recognized to manage. That the abundance of food, where in the past it wasn't as much, that we got to sort of manage that food intake. Otherwise, we get these health issues. And those are the things that I noticed back in Niue. Niueans were slim, hard-working people. But today I look at certain Niueans, you know, they love food too much. It shows, and that to me is quite a sad moment. However, that's the sad note. However, back in Niue, there was so many experiences. My mum used to chase me around the house with a broomstick whenever she gets angry with me. And, you know, there were times, there are times you just look back and laugh at it. And as kids, just kids. And I loved my moments back at Niue with my neighbours and friends. We'll finish school. We'll go and bait for unga. And that night, you know, a couple of nights later, we'll put kerosene in a bottle, a wick down in it. That was our light source at the time. And we'll burn the wick. The wick will soak up the kerosene, and that was our light source to go and hunt for unga. Memorable, absolutely memorable moments back in Niue.
That's wonderful. It's really nice to hear about those moments that you shared as a young child with your family then, before you were that special.
You got to remember, in New Zealand, you have to have a life jacket.
Okay.
In Niue, in you know, you might not understand it, but probably some older Niuean, the difficulty of carrying a canoe across a reef and timing the wave with
a child on top,
without losing that child overboard.
Oh, wow, that's amazing.
Well, that's the most memorable.
And it just shows how much then your dad, very caring man.
Oh,
I actually never met your father.
He's a highly inspired man. You know, he'd fix things. He'd fix motorbike. He was also known as a tailor. He mends, you know, he sews and fixes people's pants and dresses and whatever. So he was a man of many characters. So I learned a lot from him.
Wow. So he altered them and he also sewed them.
That's why he was known as a tailor.
Oh.
But he's also known, my father Siosiua, as the villagers sort of whisper, that he was the king.
Oh.
Not because his name. Siosiua means King George II.
Wow.
And people sort of, it's a joke, or that my dad was a king. So.
Oh, that's wonderful.
That's probably why, I guess.
Yeah, that's amazing. Okay, where would you like to take on from here? Like you've shared about Niue and the things that you loved doing back in Niue, how wonderful your dad was. And what about your mum? Did she play a big role in your life growing up before you made that transition over to New Zealand?
My mum was the breadwinner of the family. She was the teacher. She was the teacher of coffee, Laufou Moka. And she was a very faithful woman. You know, both my parents loved God and it was dedicated Seventh-day Adventists. But regardless, Mum, it was like I said, it's like she wore the pants. But unfortunately, 1977, I think Dad passed away and Mum continued. And that's another story, alone. And how well Mum adapted after Dad passed away. And she came to New Zealand with my sister, lived in Hamilton until she decided to come up to Auckland. And that's when her new life or new leaf started, when she met up again with my dad's pen friend, Mr. James Afford, that she married later.
Pen pal friends? Oh.
And that's how that developed, when Mum's audacity to marry my dad's pen friend took another beautiful turn for the whole family that exists today. So I'm very proud of my mum. She passed away in 2025.
No,
2005.
Okay,
No?
we'll leave it at that. Near around about that time, 2005, between 8. So anyway, that's an amazing story about your mum. That's wonderful. Mm-hmm. So we will carry on from the time then that you were brought over by, who did you come over to New Zealand with then?
I left Niue with my brother and my neighbours. My neighbours, Kosi, I think. And they helped me, and Kosi and Laini.
Your brother?
And my brother Frank. My late brother Frank has passed away now. And we came here, but Frank had to go to Wellington to do his apprenticeship. I stayed up here in Auckland, of course, to be with my adopted parent. And ever since then, a Niuean living in New Zealand, it's a privilege. And I always tell people, well, how come Niue, the Niue in New Zealand are very close in names also? That's because New Zealand is the new Niue, if you look at it and understand it in that sense. Niue has got something, but not as great as the new Niue, New Zealand. So it's a metaphor. But I take that into hand quite, literally. God has given us Niue, then he also gave us New Zealand. And how well are we doing in New Zealand? Absolutely astounded by the blessings that we receive today, transitioned into New Zealand, and of course the rest of the world, and of course Australia also. Australia this side.
Wonderful. And also, let's get back to, growing up in New Zealand as a young child of 10 years old. I mean, that would have been a really, really tough, I wouldn't say tough, I would say challenge.
Challenging is a good word.
How would you say then, growing up as a 10-year-old?
You got to learn. I mean, as a teen, you got to learn. And I wasn't much of a disciplinary. Wasn't much as being disciplined.
Well, you weren't a teen yet. You were only 10 years old.
I started school. I learned a little bit, but English was a new language for me, so I had to sort of learn as best as I could. School days wasn't the best. Fought with the teacher. That's when I got kicked out of high school, Oneanga High, and started working.
How old were you?
16 or 15, I think. I'm not too sure, but within that time frame. I was only in the fourth form when I had a bit of dispute with the teacher. But that day on, I just decided time to stay out of school and go and learn the school of hard knocks. And that's how I learned the experience as a Niue man, how to develop yourself and start trusting some of your ideas. And from then on, I met my beautiful wife. It was through visiting her home, because one of our brothers was having a 21st, and one of my friends, they introduced me to go to it. Unfortunately, he passed away also, not long after. But more importantly, I met this beautiful young lady.
Oh, lovely. We'll come to that story.
That's another story.
That's another story. We were focused on more of the story of you growing up. What was it like going to school? What were your...
I've already given you a little highlight of the school.
What was your upbringing like? What did you have any part-time jobs during your school, At
school, I did a lot of part-time job, and my first part-time job was delivering Star on a push bike. After that, I transitioned into delivering milk in the milk bottles way back then in the 1973, I think, 73, 74. Then my brother Vaka, I introduced also to milk run. So I gave Vaka the milk run, and I developed into another part-time. This is while I'm still at school. And it was called collecting rags from houses. But there was a process that the company was using, school children to be the workers. So after school, the van will pick us up and take us to a certain area in Auckland and say, okay, you got all that street to do and all that area, and I'll pick you up somewhere else. So we distribute the bags around, not on people's door, of course, and tell them a story of why we're there with this bag and to collect rags. So that was well paid, collecting rags. And we were getting paid by the company with the bags that we get. Mm-hmm. I don't know what the company does with the clothes, but we call it rags. And I found a lot of my own clothes came from those. Oh. Some rags. I was helping myself to the rag bags, of course, and because my family at the time didn't have plenty of resources.
So let's go back to your family, okay? So when you were adopted by Lakamu, it was only going to be you, Lakamu, and his partner at the time. So there was only going to be the four of you. Is that correct?
No, my stepmother had also a daughter called Falesa.
Yes.
And they were all living together a home in Parnell with my stepmother's dad, Sihamo, from Tuapa. And at the same time, my sister Moka was also here in New Zealand. I think she was living here in New Zealand. And she was also living with us at the time. And not long after that, she caught a cruiser and transitioned to Sydney. And that's where she's living at this point of time. But we transferred from, when I first came to New Zealand, we were living in Parnell. And the toilet was outside toilet. You had to go at the house.
Still like Niue then.
But it was flush. It wasn't a long dropper like in Niue. But that's a Niue, man. I'm very grateful. Those small transitions probably developed who I am today. Mm-hmm. And I'm a very proud Niuean, but I'm really proud as a New Zealander.
Okay, and through that part, your family it grew bigger. Is that correct? You had other members of the family join you there.
Unfortunately, my stepmother, Hula, that I only known for probably a couple of years, she passed away. She had breast cancer.
I heard she was only 32 years old.
Yeah, she died young. And then her sister had already moved, that's Siololo, had already moved to New Zealand and was staying with us at the time. So when Hula passed, a few years later, my father Lakamu hooked up with the sister Siololo because she was there.
And they got married.
They got married,
of course.
And Siololo's children also arrived. That's Momita, Vaka, Tompi, Tony, and Seth. Unfortunately, young Tony passed away. He got run over and died while riding somebody else's bush bike up in Rolla in Auckland. Mm. But there were two tragic, deaths in the family in a short space of time between that time.
Yes, which was Hula, your stepmom, and then
Silolo's
and her nephew. Yeah, Hula's nephew and Silolo's son. Oh,
those were sad times, but
yes.
The family just gone on with life and carried on. And when I finished work, I started working. When I finished school, I started working.
The woolen mills?
Woolen mills. Yeah, the woolen mills.
In Onehunga?
In Onehunga. Making blankets. But I was a teenager, hard.
Carry on from there, the woolen mills?
I finished the woolen mills and I got a job at the Toba manufacturing actually in Onehunga. It didn't last long. Then I left there. It was quite ingenuous, I think is the word. And I was jobless for probably a couple of weeks. And my sister Lena said, here's some cash, threw me a $2 coin and said, catch a bus, go find a job.
$2? That's a lot of money back then.
Instead, I just walked down the street from where we live and went into this manufacturing area just down in Onehunga. Door knocking, as I was walking, every factory I came into, I went in there and just asked for a job. Until I came into a footwear manufacturing factory and I went in there. And,
what was that called?
At the time it was called Giandros Limited. Asked for a job. They interviewed me and they said, I think it was a Friday, and they said, yeah, we'll give you a call. But we didn't have a phone at home. So I was wondering, how are you going to call me? I don't have a phone. Anyway, the lady, or I think it was the lady who interviewed me, said, oh, don't worry, we'll come and get you or something. Oh. Or you can come down on Monday and see if you got the job. Anyway, Monday came and I was walking down to see, how was the interview? Did I get a job? Only to find the lady who interviewed me had already drove up to where I was living to try and to pick me up, come to work. I got the job. And And thank God for that job. I stayed at Jandals Limited and learned a lot.
What did you start off doing?
The people that I have worked with in the factory, they really helped me and guided me along as a wild teenager, if you wish. And I started just as storeman's assistant. A storeman's assistant at the same time. I was cleaning up the factory, taking the rubbish and putting it in the jumbo bin. That was my job in the beginning. And emptying out 40-foot containers from imports that was coming in. And these were materials to make shoes with. So that was my job, to empty out containers as they arrive, stack them and store them. I was fit, young, empty out a container, sweating like a pig.
Wow.
But it fell, the factory and the engineer left. And the factory manager will call upon me from time to time to come and help them shift a few things in the factory as part of the factory momentum or factory process. Energetic, I think is the word. And I see things that were broken and I just fixed it. I'm just one of those person. I'm a bit of a Mr. Fix-It. And I just fix it. I didn't really know what I was doing, but I fixed,
Maybe you're like your dad.
I just got on with it, and I saw something that was not right, so I screwed it back down. Then the factory manager noticed that they didn't have an engineer at the time. Then they offered me a job as an engineer. And I didn't know nothing about engineering, but I love engineering.
Did you know what the word engineer meant? What was your role as an engineer?
I had a little idea. No, I didn't know exactly what the job involved. But as time progressed, I developed into an engineer. Because my boss at the time, Gary Berry, was teaching me.
And you were still this young teenager then now.
16, 17.
16, yes.
And I was given this job as a factory engineer.
Wow.
Without no qualification, thank God for that. And the factory manager took the time just to teach me a few things, being a factory engineer. And I had to learn. I had to learn and develop. And manufacture and build things that suits the footwear industry we were working at the time. And it just developed from there. And not long after that, they gave me an office, my own office to work with, or workshop anyway.
Workshop. It was a lovely little workshop you had.
I had the workshop within the factory. And then they said, no, better move it to a bigger factory, workshop. So they developed another bigger workshop just outside the main factory. So I had my own workshop,
separate away
from the factory, by myself. It was my own little workshop with a phone in it. And I said, wow. At the time, I really didn't sort of appreciated it. But when I look back and say, wow.
Were you how old then? Were you 18? Were you a bit older?
Around about 18. Yeah, 18.
17?
And when I turned, I think, 18, 19, there was something that I had done at school that came back to answer for it. It was a friend of mine while I was in Manukau Intermediate. He wore his dad's Navy captain hat to school. And I asked him a few questions. I said, what's that? And he told me the story. And that inspired me to, I want to join the Navy. And I grew up, and I think at the time I was only about 14, 15, but I was enthusiastic. So I wrote the Navy a letter. I said, I'd like to join the Navy. What do I need to do?
Were you at school at the time?
Yeah, I think I was still at school, but I was enthusiastic. I was inspired. Anyway, the Navy wrote back to me, you're still too young, stay at school. We'll give you a call back when I turn 18. And I've forgotten about it. I totally forgotten about it. Then I got a letter after I turned 18, I think.
Wow.
And the Navy, this is the Navy that I wrote. And they said, oh, Mr. Lakamu, you're turning 18. You can come in for an interview, see if we can get into the Navy.
Yes.
Oh, I was thrilled, absolutely thrilled. And I just started sort of working at Jandals Limited then. And I was an engineer. But the grace of God, that's the only reason I can say so. Qualifications or anything. And I went and got an interview with the Navy at Devonport. And while going through the interview, and remember I said I finished school at fourth form. I only had about 2 years, I think, at high school. And the interviewer said, oh, I don't think you got enough schooling to be in the Navy. Oh. And I said, oh, really? And that was really a disappointment, because I really was looking forward to joining the military in the Navy. But anyway, leaving Devonport, and I was catching a ferry back to Auckland, and I was walking up, Auckland to catch my bus back to Onehunga where I was living, and I noticed there was an army recruiting office just down by the wharf. And I just looked at it and said, okay, I'll go and see if they'll take me in. Straight when I got rejected by the Navy. And I went in, asked a few questions. They asked me a few questions. They took some details. And they said, come in for some checkup. I think it was a health check at a certain time. So I went in, got a health check. And they said, yeah, you're pretty good to be in the army. And I said, oh, wow. So they appointed me a unit to join, and they said to me, okay, well, I think you're going to be in the army. You're suitable. I was only 18, young, of course. Now, I think the army liked the young energetics. And through the process, and they accepted my application, they introduced me to a unit. And the unit was based in Devonport, camp called Fort Courtly. It was an old, I think, army training camp or navy. And they assigned me to a unit called Royal New Zealand Electrical Engineers. And I was in the army. Just through the rejection from the Navy, I just had the audacity to say, hey, I want to be in the military.
So you learned how to do all the salute and everything.
I got in the army.
Yes.
And I think a year later, they had to send me to Wairuru for basic training. I loved every moment being in the military.
We were together then.
Yes, that's correct. Yeah, and that's a typical Niuean for you. Never give up. If you want something, you just try another way or try another source. And that's a success story. If you want to do something and if you want something so bad, you just got to have a go at it.
It's for the younger generation.
Absolutely. You can't take life as a Niuean. You can't look at life and say you can't do it. It's to do with your desire. If people say to you, especially as a Niuean person, you can't do it because you're a Niuean, you give them the middle finger.
Okay, we'll keep the middle finger back down. Wonderful. It's a wonderful story. Would you like to continue this story, or is that another story?
Oh, the story goes on.
Yes, the story will go on, but I think for this...
but I think one of the most important things, just as an individual, not necessarily as a Niuean, is you've got to keep your mind fresh. Keep it fresh. Meaning learn new things. Don't be afraid to learn the new things. And right now, I mean, part of my life was going from working in a factory to working, owning my own business. And the first business we ran was an automotive business, just ran from my garage at home. Again, from no experience, just a hobby that I decided, because I liked cars then.
Yes, he was working with cars from the time I met him. So
I just took that passion into a business. And I had a kick up the butt, 97 I think it was, when the wife left. And
no,
that was
96, 97.
That was a kick up the butt for me to wake up and change my attitude, change my few things, accept God as part of the reality of life, and things just grew greatly from there on. And after going through that transition and accepting what was happening, I also got into a new industry. It was called the building industry. I started working with Can-Am with my brother Frank. I asked Frank, has he got a job at his job? And he said, yep. I went in for an interview, and I was accepted, and I started my new career in constructions. No, nothing. Never done constructions in my life, and worked with Can-Am. And Can-Am gave me some beautiful opportunities. But the time before I left Can-Am, it was only after 2 years working with them. The first major job that Can-Am gave us, or gave me anyway, and I just started with my brother Frank. Unfortunately.
Building with no qualification.
And I think it was only a month or two after joining. Brother Frank had a contract to close down all the Countrywide banks at the time, because Countrywide was closing.
In New Zealand,
New Zealand. So he had the job to go through South Island to shut down all those banks. And I was asked to go too.
Wow.
Oh my God. That was a wonderful moment. So I had a job. I just started a new job, and I was going sightseeing. And I was going to get paid to see the South Island.
See the South Island.
And I was thanking God for it delightfully for that moment and opportunity. And of course, Brother Frank took me with him. Started the job in Picton, I think it was, Richmond, all the way down to Christchurch, Oamaru, Queenstown, where I went and jumped off the parachute and did a bungee jump. So I did that also while having the job working with Can-Am, traveling the South Island, and thoroughly, absolutely enjoyed it. 2 years working for Can-Am, somebody approached me to go into contract building. I had no qualification to be a builder. That was God's grace. I started my Afford Constructions.
Was born.
Yeah, was born. And from nothing into something great. And we started to develop our company and started employing people, and mainly the family, of course. And after a while, we started to employ qualified people to help us along.
Well, thank you for having this great time to interview you.
Thank you.
We'd like
My pleasure.
we'd like to continue this for next time. Thank you, guys. You will hear the rest of his story